Hey everyone, Sarah Nova again. And this time around, we are talking about a 1977 BMW R100s. A couple videos ago, we did a bike designed by same person, or the styled by the same person. You can look back and see our video on the Katana, Suzuki Katana, styled by a guy named Hans Muth. And this bike is based on the R90s, which was also styled by this very same guy, German designer. Came out with some other groundbreaking designs and stuff. This is actually a little bit tame compared to the Katana and the R65 and the RS fairings that he designed for BMW as well. But it's kind of cool to see the crossover across the very different motorcycles, very different, obviously different brands, and the way that things get tied together sometimes. So a little bit about the R90s before we get into the R100s. The R90s came out in 1973, and it was BMW's attempt to move away from their very sort of utilitarian image. They were known for bikes that were reliable, steady, solid, go forever, and boring as hell to ride. Sidecar lugs attached to all the frames because might as well throw another, couple hundred pounds on there because you're not going to be speeding up any faster. They did have a history of racing way back in the day. They had some very cool supercharged machines pre World War II. They had some designs and some attempts over the years, but in general, they were just not very fast machines. Cut ahead to the 1970s, Honda had come out with a four-cylinder overhead cam motor. Kawasaki had come out with a double overhead cam 900cc four-cylinder motor. Kawasaki had also come out with the three-cylinder two-strokes. BSA and Triumph had come out with the three-cylinder 750 super bikes, and basically other, it goes on and on. Things were changing across the board. Bikes were getting bigger and faster and more reliable, than the old Brit Harley stuff when it comes to big bikes. And BMW decided to get in the game, and so they built they bumped up their basically the R75 to a 900cc bike. They tuned it with the 900s had 90s, excuse me, had Delordos and some cool stuff on it. Basically, they put hot rod parts on it, made a factory hot rod special, and it was great. Very similar paint to this sort of sunburst thing going on here, and it was successful. It was exclusive. It was a really fast top speed kind of machine, and it also was the first bike to win the AMA Superbike Racing Series the very first year they did it, 1976. BMW R90s came out of the gate. R90s came out of the gate. Were very successful and won a bunch of races and won the championship. Kind of seems weird when you look back now to think that a BMW Airhead could be that fast to do that stuff and go up against the Japanese bikes in that way. But they did. So a couple years later, horsepower wars are continuing. Kawasaki's Z1 had become a 1,000cc bike, and things were just moving on. There's, time marches on. So they bumped it up to 1,000cc, and here we are with the R90s. And they bumped the whole model line up. So they still had a tourer, they still had a more standard machine, all those. But the S continued. Now, obviously, the S stands for sport. I'm going to go on a limb and just, say I don't know a lot about the R100 details and how it relates. As I said, the R90s had Delordos and some other go-fast goodies. This bike has Bings on it, the standard BMW fare, and the power output doesn't seem to be any different than, say, the RS or the other models of the era. So it may be more of a styling exercise than the S was, meaning they kept the cool fairing, the bikini fairing, and the hump seat, kept sort of lower rise bars, although these are pretty common across the board. But it's otherwise pretty much the standard BMW beyond all that stuff. But again, I don't know this model particularly well. So if you're an expert on this, please fill up the comments with the actual details of this versus the other ones of the time. But it was a great bike. It is a great bike. I mean, if you've ever ridden a BMW twin, especially the big ones, they're torquey, but they're smooth because of the flat boxer motor. So vibration isn't a huge issue. They are not the fastest bikes off the line, but they have long legs. You get on the highway, and for an old vintage air-cooled machine, they just kind of cruise at higher speeds than you think they ought to be able to very comfortably. As was kind of necessary for any quality top-of-the-line bike at that time, we're into the era of disc brakes. We have aluminum rims from the factory. It's still a drum on the rear. That was mostly necessitated by their the drive shaft that they have still, still to this day used. BMWs have pretty much always exclusively used drive shafts, with the exception of the F series bikes. So there was no weight savings to be had. You have all this weight down here. The weight savings of throwing a disc brake on the back was pretty much irrelevant, especially in this time. They eventually did do that on later bikes, but it wasn't really necessary. But you do have aluminum rims, which really helps. That's your unsprung weight. And again, on the front, you have aluminum rims, drilled discs, and still with the ATE calipers, but twin discs up front. So pretty good stopping power for the mid 70s. Forks are BMW fare. The rear shocks, I don't believe these are standard. No, these are aftermarket. But it was all good. BMW didn't really cheap out on that much when it came to chassis stuff. It was always functional, not necessarily the most aggressive, the most cutting edge, but it always worked pretty well. So they're really cool bikes to ride, very capable. Not the most, some of the bikes of the 70s, as I mentioned, there's the Kawasaki triples and the Z1s, which became the KZ1000. Those bikes were drag bikes. Those bikes were hot off the line. By 76, you have like the Laverda Jota 1000cc triple, double overhead cam triple from Italy. That was also the fastest production bikes of 1976. It was none of these things, but it was smooth, it was well-mannered, and, it being a BMW, reliable. You could go 100,000 miles before you really have to worry about anything on these things. And then when you do, it's typically not that much. So age tends to kill more of these things than actual wear and tear does. So they're pretty cool bikes in that regard. Another factoid about this is this was basically, with some small changes, basically the last airhead motor that BMW made. This R100 came out in 76, and they made it until 1996, believe it or not. In 96, or after which 97, they came out with the oil heads. I'm sure there was some crossover there, but until model year 96, they were still making basically the R100 motor, airhead, air-cooled motor, which is kind of cool. They did stop briefly in the 80s. They tried to kickstart the K series, the K75, K100, water-cooled, multi-cylinder, 3-cylinder and 4-cylinder bikes. Those never really got off the ground. They're great bikes, but the purists, the dedicated BMW riders, they just didn't want to buy them. So much like the triple BSAs and Triumphs when they came out, people still wanted the twins, believe it or not, even though they didn't perform quite as well. They weren't as exciting. People like what they like. So yeah, that's about it. If you have experience with these bikes, these airheads, obviously, let us know. Please tell me, what you know about the detailed differences, because I know some of you out there really do know what makes these things tick. And what makes them particularly the S models versus the other ones. I love to hear that stuff and get a little bit more information about that. And if you've watched these videos, I really do love this early superbike era. I love comparing what these bikes, what the Germans were doing versus what the Japanese were doing. And me, I'm a sucker for punishment. I love what the Brits were trying to do to keep up with this stuff too. So 1976 was the last year that Norton put out a motorcycle. 77, they had a couple going, but you would still find this on the road with, say, a late Commando. So kind of an interesting time in motorcycles, and people were doing stuff that was cutting edge, but also still bringing the past forward, and it's all kind of cool. So thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel. And one last thing, we are starting a new program. We're going to be offering consultations via video. So it's we will charge for it. But if you're working on a project and you want some help figuring out like how to do something, it could be something complicated, it could be something simple, could be something you're too afraid to ask, or you just don't have anybody to ask about it. We'll charge by the half hour, and we will talk you through, hopefully, get you through your project. So reach out to us personally for that. We'll work on, currently we're launching it on whatever platform works for you. As it grows, we may solidify on one, but we have multiple platforms we can use to talk. So definitely check us out for that. Thanks for watching. See you next time.